Hey, what's up? This is Sports Truth. I'm your host, Jordan Harris. So before we get into this video, I just want to say thank you to Oregon Ducks and thank you to the Washington Huskies. So when you're like me and you don't have a dog in the fight, or I should probably say a duck in the fight, a lot of times all you do is you just want to see a good football game. And thankfully, these two teams gave us exactly that from the very beginning all the way to the end. Um, to the fans, like to the Husky fans and to all the Duck fans out there, I was in the middle of this game and I remember thinking like I need to tell both of these fan bases that they should be extremely proud of the way that their teams played. Of course, when your team loses, it stings, but when your team puts forth like 100% effort, like both of these teams did, they play efficient games. They don't kill themselves with turnovers. Like when your team puts forth all that effort and they play well and they lose, it should sting a little bit less because I'm telling you, both of these teams, they left it all out there. Like I appreciated the heck out of this game. This was a really good game to watch. Um, Also, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. We are working to get to 1,000 subscriptions or 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So we've got about 29 days or so. So help us meet that goal by liking the video because when you like the video, it shows it to other people. Also, subscribe because, like I said, we're trying to get to 1,000. Not trying to, we're working to get to 1,000. All right, so let's get into the video. All right, I want to talk about my expectations. So my thoughts before this game happened, I had all kind of thoughts of what I expected to happen. So I want to talk about those. I also want to talk about the things that I learned while watching this game. I want to go over some of the big plays. So like some of the stuff that sticks with me, like right now, some of the plays that I'm thinking of, like man, that could have changed the game. And then I want to talk about Washington going forward. Okay, so first, let's talk about my expectations and some of the things that I thought about each team before this game happened. So, I watched the first game when it happened. Obviously, Washington won a really close game. Oregon ended up missing a field goal towards the end, but that game was super close. I figured Oregon would come out and beat the brakes off of Washington this game. I thought they would win by 14, maybe 17 points. I didn't think this game would be that close. I had plenty of reasons to believe that. So the first game, if you look at the trajectories of both teams, so before the first game, Washington seemed like they were just putting it on everybody. Michael Penix Jr. was throwing the ball wherever he wanted to. They were putting up huge numbers. Um, Oregon put up some good numbers too, but it seemed like once they played each other, after that game, it seemed like Oregon took their game to a whole nother level and they just started pummeling everybody and started playing this aggressive style of football while playing a fast style of football too. Like it was just like they looked like they were the aggressor or they were the hunter after that Washington game. Like it seemed like they really elevated their level of play. On the other hand, to me it felt like Washington, it seemed like they all of a sudden started to take this, instead of being aggressive, they started taking this sheepish mentality, or they started to look at themselves as the hunted instead of the hunter after that Oregon game. It seemed like Washington started playing timid, and it looked like Washington started to overthink stuff instead of just playing free. Um, so when you put those two things together, when you put together the fact that Oregon was the hunter and was super aggressive, and then Washington seemed to be overthinking stuff, playing timid. Michael Penix seemed like he started to be overwhelmed by all of the hype that started to be surrounded by him. Like that concerned me quite a bit. Um, and I felt like eventually in this game, Michael Penix would get overwhelmed and just start to fall apart. That's what I really thought was going to happen. I thought he was going to come out, throw one interception, and then that would lead to another one, and then might lead to a fumble, and it just turned into this onslaught where Oregon ended up taking like a, I don't know, 17-point lead and then ended up finishing the game soon after that. That's what I thought. But both of these teams came to play. To me, reminded like I grew up playing a lot of video games and stuff with all my friends and my family. This game reminded me of Mortal Kombat. I don't know if you've played that game before, but I used to play that when I was younger. It's like both players, both teams in this instance, were throwing haymakers at each other, and there's blood flying everywhere. Neither person's giving up. They get hit by something, get back up, and hit the other person. The other person falls down and gets back up. That's what it felt like. Most people would say it felt like a heavyweight boxing match, but to me, it seemed like these teams were ready to fight to the death. More like Mortal Kombat than a boxing match. That's just the way I took it. So those are my expectations. I thought Oregon would run away with this game. That didn't happen, though. Okay, so let's talk about the things that I learned in this game. Okay, Washington's wide receivers are elite. And I'm not talking about Pac-12 elite. I'm not talking about decent football team elite. I'm talking about, like, the best receivers in the country elite. How do you pronounce his name? Odunze? Like, that dude is ridiculous. And I know he's top 5 as far as Mel Kiper Jr., he hasn't ranked like top 5 as far as the draft goes. And, like, I put my stamp of approval on it. He made some catches in this game. I'm like, golly. And, of course, there's these high-ranked wide receivers that get to the NFL, and sometimes they just fizzle out because they just cannot compete with the level of physicality that these cornerbacks bring to them. But this dude, he ready. He's a problem. I don't care where he gets drafted. He is going to be, unless maybe the Bears get him. Lord have mercy with the Bears. But just about anywhere else, he is going to be a problem. I can see him being a problem from the first day he steps onto a football field in the NFL. So that's one thing that I learned. Washington wide receivers are elite. Next thing, usually Pac-12 games, like, I feel like they are the JV teams waiting to be served up to the SEC teams to be just eaten alive. Like, that's what I always feel like. Like, okay, this Pac-12 game is cute, but once we find out who's the best Pac-12 team, we'll put them against Alabama, and Alabama will swallow them whole and beat them by 28 points, just outmanning them. This felt a little different. It actually felt a whole lot different. I think these guys can compete with SEC teams or anyone else they're matched up against. Like, I kept thinking, like, if Oregon does win, let's say if Oregon wins a close game, would I feel right having Oregon go to the playoffs and then having Washington sit at home when they've already beat Oregon earlier in the year? I kind of wouldn't feel right with that. Like, y'all gonna probably try to kill me for this, but I was halfway thinking, like, man, go ahead and put the winner of the SEC in there, put both of these teams in there, Oregon and Washington, and then go ahead and pick your fourth one. Not Florida State, but go ahead and pick your fourth one. Because I didn't think it would be right for Washington to have one loss, Oregon to have one loss, and then Oregon goes, and then Washington stays at home, even though Washington beat Oregon earlier in the year. I didn't think that would be right. So I kept thinking, if Oregon wins this game, I would only feel right about this game if they both somehow get to go to the playoffs. Even though that doesn't make logical sense to some people, it makes a ton of sense to me. Another thing that I learned in this game, Michael Penix and Bo Nix, they both got a heart of a champion, both of them. There were plenty of times where those quarterbacks could have just been like, man, this is not our day. I'm gonna go ahead and call it good. We lost this when it's over. But they kept on making play after play after play, whether they were doing a play action deep ball or they were scrambling trying to find a way to make a play down the field, or they had to make play with their legs. Like, Bo Nix, he is super athletic. We know that, but Michael Penix is not. He does not use his legs very often. But it came a few times, like in the fourth quarter, we had to start running and get those first downs. Excellent play calls by the offensive coordinator for Washington, because there was a couple of times where I think they did like a read. I think it was like a read option, and he kept the ball and got a first down twice. And I'm like, okay, I see what y'all doing. So Bo Nix, Penix, I applaud both of them for the heart of champion that they showed because that was some real good football. I appreciated that. The next thing I learned in this game was Washington running backs. Like Johnson, he runs hard. He runs hard. You have to have two hands and a whole nother person to help bring him down. He is a tough running back. He's got exceptional lean, what I call lean, like when you saw Ezekiel Elliott first get into the NFL and he was running for the Cowboys. It seemed like every time Ezekiel Elliott would get tackled, he would lean forward and get an additional 1 or 2 yards. And that's what it felt like Johnson was getting. Every time he would get grabbed, he would get a bonus 1 or 2 yards every time. His lean was tremendous in this game. The last thing that I learned in this game, well, two more things actually. The next thing I learned in this game was both of these teams, they do have real defenses. So this is, I mean, if you watch the Big 12, most of the time they're going to put up all kind of numbers on the offensive end, but they don't have any type of defense. I felt like both of these teams had really good offensive line and defensive lines, but I thought their defenses were actually legit in this game. I really did think so. So let's just go on to the next part, which is the big plays, okay? So big plays, some of the plays that are still in my mind right now. Michael Penix, the missed throw that he had in the second quarter. It was the first play of the second quarter. Huge play. It was a touchdown. He just missed him. I think it was, what's his name? McMillan, I think his name is. He ran a double route. He did like a 5-yard out and then cut it back up the field. Cornerback bit on that so hard. Wide open touchdown. And he just overthrew him. And like I told you earlier, I thought this game was going to be too big for Michael Penix. I thought that he was going to just be overwhelmed. And when I saw him throw that, I was like, oh, here we go. I was just waiting on it. Like the whole game, I was waiting on that moment to happen for him to just unravel because of what I've seen the previous few games. Like every now and again, he would show me a sign and say, oh, boy. So I thought this game was going to be, this moment would be too big for him. And when I saw him overthrow McMillan for this wide open touchdown that would have extended the lead from 10-0 to 17-0, I'm like, oh, man, maybe this moment is too big for him. And then, like, you know how it is. Like, if you have a team down 17-0, 24-0, sometimes the opposing team will go ahead and just quit. Like, sometimes that happens. So for it to be 10-0 and to have the opportunity to go up 17-0 in the beginning, that's a big, huge play. I think that was the biggest play of the game. Even though it was the first play of the second quarter, it was super early. I think that was the biggest play of the game because I feel like it was the opportunity to tell Oregon, y'all can't play with us. And then Oregon ended up, and then since he missed the pass, it gave Oregon the opportunity to think, okay, we can play with them. We're all right. So I think that one play was a huge, dramatic swing that could have gone either way. Could have made Oregon feel like, oh, we can't play with them. It's not our day. But since he missed it, they're like, okay, we can play with them. Because they ended up getting the ball and scoring a field goal the next play and cutting the lead from, instead of it 17-0, ended up being 10-3. So I thought that was a huge play. Okay, second half, a huge play was Bo Nix' third quarter scramble and then quick release touchdown throw. That play was crazy to me. I'm trying to think of who the receiver was. I think it was Terrence Ferguson, I believe his name was, the tight end. He was pretty good. I never saw him. I never really paid attention to him in any games before, but he looked really good today. But yeah, that Bo Nix scramble, because he's super athletic, that scramble, and then he ran to the right, and it looked like he was going to try to run for the pylon, and he saw this tight end in the middle of the field at the last second, and just, I'm left-handed, so he threw it right-handed. All right, that was nice. Really impressive there. Okay, so then the Penix interception after that. Okay, so we had Oregon down, what was it, 20-3, I think it was? They were down pretty big. And then they ended up scoring a touchdown before half, cut it 20-10. And then Bo Nix ended up, or what was it? Penix ended up throwing an interception in the second half. And again, thinking that he's going to unravel, I'm like, oh, here we go. It's about to happen. Because it just seemed like that is the moment where the game started to crescendo a little bit. Like, that's when the moment started to really, really rise. And it was a put up or shut up moment for Washington. And it looked like he wasn't going to put up when he threw that interception. And I'm like, oh, man. But then, right after that, instead of capitalizing on that and scoring a touchdown and really seizing the moment with the momentum, Oregon ended up throwing an interception themselves to the corner who was out of bounds and then stepped back in bounds and caught it. I didn't know you could do that. I thought if you were an offensive player or a defensive player, you couldn't come back in and touch the ball, but learned something new today. But, yeah, so Penix threw the interception, and then it looked like the momentum was heavily for Oregon, and then Bo Nix ended up returning the favor through an interception of his own. That was a big play, huge play. Okay, Oregon ended up taking the lead soon after that. And then, so after Oregon took the lead, I'm thinking, oh, okay, here we go. Oregon's just going to pile on with this avalanche real quick. But then, like, Penix got the ball back and scored, and then they scored. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's part of what I mean when I'm talking about the heart of the champion is they had so many opportunities to get overwhelmed and quit, and they did not get overwhelmed. They never quit on this stuff. So that was super, super impressive to me. And then whenever Washington scored that touchdown and they had the ball for 6.5 minutes, that was crazy. You gotta applaud them for that. That was nuts. Okay. Another big play. And we're gonna talk about this one because I said both teams shut up the play. I felt like both teams played extremely hard every play except for one play in this game. And I didn't have, like I said earlier, I didn't have a dog or a duck in the fight. But I love to see people competing, and I love to see people playing hard. And whenever I see 1, 2, or 3 people on a team not playing hard, it pisses me off. And there was one play that had me hot. I rewound it over and over and over looking at it because I couldn't believe that the effort that these guys gave after their teammates were giving so much energy the entire game. And here it is right here. Okay, so let's pause it. So this guy, and there's a Washington defender right over there in the corner. You will see them they will go from giving 70% to 30% effort from here until this guy scores. Him, and that guy, that Washington defender back there. Their effort will all go somewhere between 70 and 30%, where each one of them had the mentality of, oh, okay, my teammate's going to get him all slow up. Oh, I better get him now. Too late. Every one of them, all 3 of them had that same mentality of, oh, my teammate's got him. Oh, no, he didn't get him. Let me get him real quick. Oh, too late. Like, this play had me hot. I watched this play I've probably watched this play 10 times now. That's just how I'm kind of weird like that. But, like, look at that. Look at him. Like, what are they doing? I watched this play over and over and over, and I'm like, what are these dudes doing? To be in a game this important and to have the stakes this high and for your teammates to have just scored a touchdown to put you up 2 scores and then you give up a touchdown in 30 seconds, that's crazy. It's this guy, and the guy back here, if you want to watch it again. All right, here we go. Look at number 3. Now look at, what is that? I can't get with that. We're going to have to watch it one more time. I'm sorry. Just to make it number, 12 or 13 for me seeing this play. I'm not going to interrupt it this time. We're just going to watch it together and look at the effort from the guys in purple here. Look at him. Look, what are they? Okay. I digress, cause man, I mess around and punch my computer screen watching that play again. It's crazy. I can't hardly stand to look at that. Um, yeah, I can't understand that, and I'm sure that play is going to be shown over and over and over during film study. I can't imagine how many times they're going to look at that play, not just based on the X's and O's falling apart, but the effort, the lack of effort that was put in on that play. When your teammates depend on you that much, you can't do that, man. But that was the one play that I felt like the guys that every player on the field didn't give 100%. That was the only play. Everything else, it seemed like they left their blood, sweat, and tears out there. The last play I want to talk about was the 3rd and 4 with 2 minutes left in the game. The commentators made a big deal about him throwing the ball there instead of just running it and forcing Oregon to call another timeout. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, you're an offensive team. Like nobody is saying that Washington is a defensive team that plays possession football. Nobody's saying that. Like Washington is a score first team. Like let's just be honest, and they're a throw heavy team. So I'm like, yeah, they're gonna try to get this first down. Like if it was Alabama, maybe it's like, okay, let's go ahead and punt this off and rely on our defense. Even though Washington's defense is pretty good, like their offense is what really makes them win. So if your offense has the ball and you have the quarterback that you think is the best in the nation, put him out there and have him get the first down. And that's exactly what they did. Perfectly executed play. I thought it was a perfectly called play because they put their best wide receiver on the right side and they put their second best wide receiver right behind him. So then you have your best wide receiver run straight ahead and gain all the attention, and then your second receiver just peels back, catches the ball, easy first down. Drew it up, and it worked out perfectly. I thought it was a perfect play call. Perfect delivery, perfectly executed. Good football. All right, so now let's talk about Washington going forward. Offensively, they look legit. I think that they could compete and play I think they would match up just fine against Georgia or Alabama. I think they would wear Florida State out. Michigan, I think they could play with them. That would be a really good game, though. So I think the offense will score against anybody. The defense, they just got to be really aware of the letdowns because they had a letdown at the end of the first half where they let Oregon just walk down and score within it was a minute and 30-second drive. I think it was just 3 plays or something like that. And then one at the end of the game, a letdown where they had 2 plays, 30-second touchdown. So if they can reduce these defensive letdowns, they'll be just fine. Do I see them winning the whole thing this year? No, I see Georgia winning the whole thing. I'm praying that Michigan doesn't win the whole thing because I've got a bet that I made like 20 years ago between the Miami Hurricanes and Michigan Wolverines. One of my best friends is a Michigan Wolverines fan, and I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan. And we bet about 15 years ago. We said whoever wins the championship first between Miami and Michigan, the other person has to pay that person $100. So Michigan is knocking on the door, and boy, I'm hoping they figure out a way to lose. Yeah, so that's where I stand on that. So yeah, I got a little bias on the Washington thing. So those are my thoughts on this game, man. I thought it was a really well played game by both schools. I really didn't think it would have been right for Washington to have to sit out of the playoffs if they would have lost this game because, like I said earlier, I felt like they already earned the opportunity since they beat Oregon earlier this year, and then this would have been their first loss. I felt like they should have went to the playoffs. So I'm actually glad that Washington did end up winning this game because if they would have lost, they wouldn't have put them in there. Let's just be honest. But yeah, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this game. What are your big takeaways? Leave those in the comment section because this game was all over the place. Really exciting game, really well played, really well coached. Big fan of Oregon, big fan of Washington. They played an exceptional game today. So let me know your thoughts. Be glad to hear those. Glad to read those. I'm super involved in the comment section. I usually respond to every single comment. So Let me know your thoughts on that. Also, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we are working on getting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. All right, that's all that I got for you today. I appreciate you watching the video. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I really do appreciate that. God bless. Take care. Peace.